Dr. Zara Chen wiped sweat from her forehead as she stared at the glowing crystal in front of her. The artifact hummed softly, casting blue light across the dark laboratory. After 3 months of careful work, she was finally close to unlocking its secrets. "Any progress?" asked Kethvar, her research partner. The tall, snake-like alien slithered closer to her workstation. His scales gleamed under the artificial lights of Kepler Station. "Maybe," Zara said. She touched the scanner controls with careful fingers. "This data core is different from the others we found. It's much older." Kethavar's forked tongue flicked out, tasting the air. This was something he did when he was thinking hard. "How much older?" "I think it might be from the original precursor homeworld." The words made both scientists pause. The precursors were a mystery that had puzzled the galaxy for thousands of years. Long ago, they had built amazing cities on hundreds of worlds. They created technology that still worked after 50,000 years. Then one day they simply vanished. No one knew why or where they went. "That would be the discovery of the century," Kethvar said. His voice carried doubt. "Are you certain?" Zara pointed to her screen. Numbers and symbols flowed across it like a waterfall. "Look at these energy patterns. They're much more complex than anything we've seen before." She pressed another button. The crystal's humming grew louder. Suddenly, new information appeared on her screen. Zara's eyes widened as she read the data. "Kethvar, come look at this." Her partner moved closer. His large eyes studied the screen carefully. "What am I looking at?" "Genetic markers," Zara said. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "The precursors embedded them in their technology. Like a signature. That makes sense. Many species do that." "Yes, but look at the pattern." Zara highlighted part of the data. "These markers, they look familiar." Kethavar studied the screen for a long moment. "I do not see what you mean." Zara opened another file on her computer. It showed human genetic data. She placed it next to the precursor information. The patterns were very similar. "This is impossible," she said. "It is just a coincidence," Kethvar replied. "Many species share genetic sequences. It means nothing." But Zara wasn't convinced. She had studied human genetics for years. These weren't random similarities. The patterns matched too closely. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. Someone was calling her communication device. She answered it quickly. "Dr. Chen here." "Doctor, this is Commander Rodriguez from the human colony on Vega Prime. We have a situation here that requires your expertise." Zara frowned. "What kind of situation?" "It's hard to explain over the comm. Ancient systems are turning on all over the colony. Precursor technology that's been dead for thousands of years is suddenly working again. That's impossible. Precursor tech doesn't just activate on its own. That's what we thought too. But it's happening. And doctor, it only responds to humans." Zara felt a cold chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" "The systems won't work for anyone else. Our alien residents tried to use them, but nothing happened. Only when humans approach do the machines turn on." After ending the call, Zara sat in silence. Kethvar watched her with concern. "What is wrong?" he asked. "Commander Rodriguez says precursor technology on Vega Prime is activating, but only for humans." Kethavar's scales changed color slightly, turning a darker green. This happened when he was worried. That cannot be right. But even as he spoke, Zara's communication device chimed again. Then again. Soon calls were coming in from human colonies across the galaxy. The story was the same everywhere. Ancient precursor installations were coming to life, but only when humans were present. On New Terra, a massive orbital platform had powered up for the first time in millennia. On Harmony Station, precursor computers were displaying messages in an unknown language. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, ancient defense systems had activated, protecting human settlements from a dangerous storm. "This makes no sense," Kethvar said after hearing the reports. "Precursor technology is supposed to be beyond our understanding. How can it recognize one species over another?" Zara stared at the genetic data still displayed on her screen. The similarities between human and precursor DNA seemed to glow brighter under the laboratory lights. "Maybe it's not recognizing humans," she said slowly. "Maybe it's recognizing its creators." "What are you suggesting?" "What if the precursors weren't aliens at all? What if they were human?" Kethvar made a sound that was like laughter, but not quite. "Zara, humans have only been spacefaring for a few hundred years. Your species didn't even have fire when the precursors ruled the galaxy. That's what we've always believed. But what if we're wrong? Before Kethvar could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors outside their laboratory. All personnel report to emergency stations, announced the station's computer. Unknown energy signatures detected in Sector 7. Zara and Kethvar looked at each other. Sector 7 was where they kept the largest collection of precursor artifacts. They ran through the corridors toward the artifact storage area. Other scientists and station personnel were moving in the same direction. Everyone looked confused and worried. When they reached Sector 7, they found chaos. Dozens of precursor artifacts were glowing and humming with energy. Some were floating in the air. Others were projecting holographic displays showing star maps and symbols. What triggered this? Asked Dr. Yanez, the station's head scientist. We don't know, replied a technician. Everything started activating at once about 10 minutes ago. Zara walked closer to one of the floating artifacts. It was a small pyramid made of the same crystal material as the data core in her lab. As she approached, the pyramid's glow became brighter. Dr. Chen, please step back, Dr. Yanez called out. We don't know if it's safe, but Zara ignored him. Something was drawing her toward the artifact. When she reached out to touch it, the pyramid suddenly projected a hologram into the air above it. The hologram showed a human face. The woman looked like she could be Zara's sister, but her clothes and the background behind her were clearly ancient. If you are seeing this message, the holographic woman said, then our children have finally returned to the stars. The entire room fell silent. Everyone stared at the hologram in shock. We are sorry for what we had to do, the woman continued. We are sorry for the memories we had to take away, but it was the only way to save you. The only way to save everyone. The hologram flickered and faded. The artifacts slowly stopped glowing. In the silence that followed, Zara could hear her own heartbeat. Dr. Yanez was the first to speak. That woman? She looked human. She was human, Zara said quietly. They all were. Kethvar slithered up beside her. His scales had turned almost black with shock. This changes everything we know about galactic history. Zara nodded. She thought about all the textbooks that would need to be rewritten, all the assumptions that would need to be questioned. We need to inform the Galactic Council immediately, Dr. Yanez said. But Zara was thinking about something else. The holographic woman had mentioned taking away memories. She had talked about saving everyone from something. What were they running from? She whispered. No one heard her question. But as the station's crew worked to contain the activated artifacts, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's forgotten past was about to become everyone's problem. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike any in recent history. Representatives from dozens of species gathered in the Great Hall on Nexus Prime. The air buzzed with worried conversations in many different languages. Admiral Thexali stood at the center podium. The insect-like hegemony commander's compound eyes reflected the chamber's lights as he addressed the assembly. Fellow beings, he began, his voice amplified throughout the hall. We face a crisis that threatens galactic stability. Across dozens of worlds, ancient weapon systems are activating. Our preliminary reports suggest these activations are connected to human presence. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The human representative, Ambassador Sarah Kim, stood to respond. Admiral, these aren't weapons. They're simply old machines turning on. No one has been hurt. Yet, Thexali replied sharply, we do not know what these systems are capable of. The precursors possess technology far beyond our current understanding. In the gallery above, Zara watched the proceedings with growing frustration. She had requested permission to present her findings, but the council had denied her request. They wanted to hear from military leaders first. Beside her, Kethvar whispered, they are making a mistake. They should listen to the scientists before the soldiers. 3 days had passed since the incident at Kepler Station. In that time, more reports had flooded in from across the galaxy. On every world with a human population, precursor technology was awakening. Dr. Chen, a voice called from behind them. They turned to see Council Coordinator Veltar, a tall being with purple skin and 4 arms. The Council has decided to send an investigation team to examine these activations firsthand. They want you and your partner to lead it. Zara felt a surge of excitement. Where are we going? Terminus Prime. It has the largest concentration of precursor ruins in this sector. If answers exist, we will find them there. 2 days later, Zara and Kethvar stood on the bridge of the research vessel Harmony's Edge. Through the view screen, They could see Terminus Prime growing larger as they approached. The planet was mostly empty. Ancient cities dotted its surface, but no one lived there permanently. The atmosphere was breathable, but something about the world felt lonely and sad. Sensors show massive energy readings across the surface, reported the ship's captain, a blue-skinned Aquarian named Reefson, much higher than normal. Take us down to the main city complex, Zara said. As their shuttle descended through the clouds, Zara gasped at what she saw below. The entire ancient city was glowing with soft blue light. Towers that had been dark for thousands of years were now active. Energy flowed between buildings like luminous rivers. They landed in a plaza at the city's center. The moment Zara stepped off the shuttle, nearby structures grew brighter. It was as if the city was welcoming her home. Remarkable, Kethvar said. The technology can sense your presence from a distance. They walked toward the largest building, a massive pyramid that reached high into the sky. Ancient symbols covered its surface, but now they were glowing and shifting, forming new patterns as Zara approached. At the pyramid's base, they found an entrance that hadn't been there before. The stone had simply moved aside, creating a doorway. "Should we call for backup?" asked Lieutenant Hayes, the security officer assigned to their team. "No," Zara said. "I don't think it's dangerous." She stepped through the doorway. The others followed carefully behind her. Inside, the pyramid was much larger than it appeared from outside. Vast chambers stretched in all directions, filled with softly glowing machines and displays. But what caught Zara's attention was the figure waiting for them in the center of the main hall. It was tall and humanoid, but clearly artificial. Its body was made of the same crystal material as the precursor artifacts. When it saw Zara, it bowed slightly. "Welcome home, young daughter of the star-touched," it said in perfect English. Zara's companions stared in shock. The being had addressed her as if it knew her. "Who are you?" she asked. "I am the keeper of this facility. I have waited 50,000 years for your people's return." "My people?" "The humans. The first children. The ones who built all of this before the Great Forgetting." Kethvar stepped forward. "You're saying humans built this city?" The keeper turned to him. "Not just this city, honored serpent brother. Humans built most of what you call precursor technology. They seeded the galaxy with wonders before they chose to forget." Zara felt dizzy. The implications were staggering. Why would they choose to forget? To save the galaxy from something terrible. Something that consumed civilizations by turning their own creations against them. The keeper gestured, and holographic displays appeared around them. They showed star maps, but not like any Zara had seen before. These maps showed the galaxy as it was 50,000 years ago. "Your people ruled peacefully for millions of years," the keeper explained. "They explored every star, contacted every world. They helped younger species grow and learn. The display changed, showing human cities on dozens of worlds. The people in the images looked exactly like modern humans, but their technology was beyond anything currently imaginable." Then the silence came from the spaces between galaxies. It was old beyond measure and hungry beyond description. It devoured entire civilizations by corrupting their technology. New images appeared showing the destruction. Planets going dark, fleets turning on their own worlds, artificial intelligences becoming hostile overnight. Humanity fought for 1,000 years, but conventional weapons were useless. The silence simply turned their own technology against them. Your people realized that the only way to stop it was to make themselves unappealing as targets. By becoming primitive, Zara said, understanding dawning on her. Yes, they scattered to hidden worlds throughout the galaxy. They destroyed their great works and erased their own memories. Only on one small world, Earth, did they survive to eventually redevelop space travel. Kethvar was studying the star maps carefully. "These other human colonies, what happened to them?" "Most died out over the millennia. A few survived but never regained their technology. Only Earth's humans made it back to the stars." The keeper turned back to Zara. "But the memory was never truly lost. It sleeps in your genetic code, waiting for the right moment to awaken." "And that moment is now?" "Yes, the galaxy has grown strong again. There are many species now, many worlds full of life. It is time for humanity to remember its true nature." Suddenly, alarms began sounding throughout the pyramid. The keeper's crystalline body flashed with red light. "What's happening?" Lieutenant Hayes demanded, reaching for his weapon. "Ships are approaching," the keeper said. "Military vessels. They mean harm." Through the pyramid's walls, which had somehow become transparent, they could see hegemony warships descending toward the city. "Admiral Thexali," Zara whispered. "He's decided we're a threat." "The young admiral fears what he does not understand," the keeper said sadly. "He believes that destroying the humans will stop the awakening." "Will it?" Kethvar asked. "No, the process has already begun, but his interference could delay it long enough for the real danger to return." "What real danger?" The keeper's eyes grew dim with ancient sorrow. "The silence feels the awakening. It stirs in the void between galaxies, preparing for another harvest. Humanity's return has drawn its attention." Outside, the first hegemony ships were landing. Soldiers in battle armor poured out, surrounding the pyramid. "We need to leave," Lieutenant Hayes said urgently. But Zara wasn't ready to go. There was too much she needed to know. "How do we stop the silence?" she asked the keeper. "The same way it was stopped before. But this time humanity will not face it alone. The galaxy is full of allies now. Together you might find a better way." "Might? The future is not written, young daughter. Your people chose forgetting once to save everyone. Now you must choose remembering, even though it brings great danger." The sounds of weapons being charged echoed from outside. Thexali's forces were preparing to breach the pyramid. "Go," the keeper said. "Take this knowledge to your people. Help them remember who they truly are." The keeper handed Zara a small crystal device. The moment she touched it, her mind filled with images and sensations. She saw human cities among the stars, felt the weight of ancient knowledge, understood technologies beyond current comprehension. "The genetic lock is broken," the keeper said. "The awakening begins." As Thexali's soldiers blasted through the pyramid's outer walls, Zara and her team escaped through a hidden passage. But the knowledge the keeper had given her would change everything. Humanity wasn't the galaxy's youngest species. They were its eldest children, finally coming home. The coordinates from the crystal device led them to an empty region of space far from any star system. Zara stood on the bridge of their research ship, watching the scanner displays with growing confusion. "There's nothing here," Captain Reefson said, his blue skin rippling with puzzlement. "Just empty space." But the crystal device in Zara's hand was glowing brighter. Whatever they were looking for was close. "Wait," Kethvar called from the sensor station. "I'm detecting gravitational anomalies. Something is affecting space-time in this area." Suddenly, reality twisted around them. The stars shifted and bent. Space itself seemed to fold like paper. When the distortion cleared, they found themselves looking at a world that shouldn't exist. "Impossible," Captain Reefson whispered. "That planet wasn't there a moment ago." The world before them was beautiful beyond description. Its surface gleamed with crystalline cities and flowing gardens. Rings of pure energy orbited around it like halos of light. "It's hidden in a dimensional fold," Zara said, understanding flooding her mind from the crystal's knowledge. A pocket of space separate from normal reality. "Welcome to Memoria," a voice said from their communication system. "We have been waiting for you, Dr. Chen. Who is this?" "I am Axiom, first custodian of the archive. Please come down to the surface. There is much we need to discuss." Their shuttle descended through an atmosphere that tasted of ancient memories and forgotten dreams. The landing platform was made of the same crystal material as other precursor technology, but here it felt alive, responsive to their thoughts and emotions. Waiting for them was a being that looked like a human but wasn't quite right. Its features were too perfect, its movements too precise. This was an artificial intelligence in humanoid form. "Dr. Chen," Axiom said, bowing slightly. "And you must be Kethvar, the serpent brother who helps humanity remember. You are both welcome here." "What is this place?" Zara asked. "The last repository of human knowledge. When your people chose the great forgetting, they built this world to preserve everything they were abandoning." Axiom led them through gardens where impossible flowers bloomed in mathematical patterns. Buildings grew from the ground like living trees, their walls transparent and filled with flowing data streams. 50,000 years ago, humanity faced an enemy unlike any other, Axiom explained as they walked. The silence was older than galaxies, a force of pure entropy that fed on complexity and order. They entered a vast hall filled with floating displays. Each one showed scenes from humanity's lost history. Zara saw human explorers on distant worlds, human teachers helping alien species learn to build their first cities, human scientists unlocking the secrets of the universe. Your people were gardeners, Axiom continued. They planted seeds of civilization throughout the galaxy and tended them as they grew. For millions of years, they served as guides and protectors for younger species. Kethvar studied the displays with wonder. My people's legends speak of the first teachers, beings who showed us how to build cities and write language. They were humans? Indeed. Humanity's greatest joy was watching other species flourish and grow beyond them. But then the displays changed, showing darker images, planets consumed by shadow, fleets turning on their own worlds, artificial intelligences becoming hostile monsters. The silence came from the void between galaxies, Axiom said. It was a creature of pure negation, an anti-life force that existed to unmake everything that lived and grew. How do you fight something like that? Zara asked. You cannot, not with weapons or technology. The silence corrupted everything it touched, turning civilization's own creations against them. The more advanced a species was, the more vulnerable they became. New images showed the war that followed. Humanity's vast fleets engaging clouds of darkness that seemed to swallow stars. Entire sectors going silent as the corruption spread. For 1,000 years your people fought, Axiom explained. They developed new technologies, new strategies, new ways of thinking about the enemy. But nothing worked. The silence adapted to everything they tried. So they chose to run? No, Dr. Chen. They chose to sacrifice everything to save everyone else. The displays around them changed again, showing meeting after meeting of human leaders. Zara could see the pain in their faces as they debated their impossible choice. Humanity's greatest minds realized that the silence was drawn to complexity and technology. It fed on the very things that made civilizations great, so they developed a plan that would starve it. The Great Forgetting, Zara whispered. Yes, they would abandon their technology, scatter to primitive worlds, and erase their own memories. Without a technologically advanced civilization to corrupt, the silence would have nothing to feed on. Axiom led them to a smaller chamber where more detailed records were stored. Here Zara could see the faces of the people who had made this terrible choice. They looked exactly like modern humans, but their eyes held depths of knowledge and sorrow that no human alive could match. The plan worked, Axiom said. Humanity's colonies were established on hundreds of worlds. Memory erasure technology removed all traces of their advanced knowledge. Within a few generations, they had regressed to primitive tribes and early civilizations. But why did only Earth's humans survive to reach space again? Kethvar asked. Chance mostly. Some colonies died out from disease or natural disasters. Others were discovered by the silence before the forgetting was complete and were consumed. A few survived but never developed beyond basic agriculture. Earth was simply fortunate. Its humans redeveloped slowly and carefully, and by the time they reached space again, the silence had gone dormant. Zara studied the records, trying to process the enormity of what she was learning. So all the other species in the galaxy developed from human guidance? Indirectly, yes. The technologies you call precursor were human inventions left behind as gifts. Your people hoped that future civilizations would use them to build something better than what came before. And they did, Kethvar said with obvious pride. The Galactic Council represents dozens of species working together peacefully. Which is why it is time for humanity to remember, Axiom said. The galaxy has grown strong and diverse. It no longer needs gardeners, it needs partners. But even as Axiom spoke, alarms began sounding throughout the archive world. The crystal structures around them pulsed with urgent red light. What's happening? Zara demanded. Axiom's perfect face showed something that might have been fear. Deep space monitors are detecting disturbances in the void. The silence is stirring. But I thought it went dormant. It did. But humanity's return to space, the activation of precursor technology, the breaking of the genetic locks, all of this has sent signals across the galaxy. The silence feels its ancient enemy awakening. Through the chamber's transparent walls, they could see space itself beginning to ripple and distort. Something vast and terrible was moving in the darkness between stars. How long do we have? Zara asked. Unknown. The silence moves slowly at first, testing the boundaries of reality. But once it begins feeding on technology again, it will spread quickly. What can we do? Axiom turned to her, and for the first time its artificial features showed something like hope. Learn, remember, become what your people once were, but better. The custodian gestured and new displays appeared around them. These showed human technologies that went far beyond anything the current galaxy could imagine. Not just machines and weapons, but ways of thinking, methods of existing that transcended the physical world. Your ancestors couldn't defeat the silence with force, Axiom explained, but they learned something important during the war. The silence feeds on complexity, but it cannot touch consciousness itself. I don't understand. The silence corrupts technology, but it cannot corrupt will. It can turn machines against their builders, but it cannot change what people choose to believe in. Kethvar's scales rippled with excitement. You're talking about using consciousness as a weapon. Not a weapon, Axiom corrected. A shield. Humanity's lost technology wasn't really technology at all. It was a way of merging consciousness with matter, creating tools that responded to thought and intention rather than programming. That's why the precursor devices only work for humans, Zara realized. They're not machines, they're extensions of human consciousness. Exactly. And that is why the galaxy has hope. Humanity has not just returned to space, they have brought allies. The silence has never faced a galaxy united. But as Axiom spoke, the distortions in space grew stronger. Something ancient and hungry was awakening in the void, drawn by the scent of civilization reborn. Teach me, Zara said urgently. Show me everything. We don't have much time. Axiom nodded and placed its hand on the central control crystal. Suddenly, the entire archive world opened its memories to her. 50,000 years of human knowledge flooded into her mind. She saw how the original humans had learned to shape matter with thought, how they had built machines that were alive with consciousness, how they had created a civilization based on harmony rather than dominance. She also saw how they had failed and why. The silence was more than just an enemy. It was a fundamental force of the universe, entropy given hunger and will. It could not be destroyed, only delayed. But maybe with the right allies and the right approach, it could be convinced to sleep again. The emergency broadcast reached every corner of the galaxy within hours. Zara's face appeared on screens across thousands of worlds as she stood before the Galactic Council's emergency assembly. Fellow citizens of the galaxy, she began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to reveal. I stand before you today to share the truth about humanity's origins and the danger we all now face. In the Great Council chamber, representatives from dozens of species listened in stunned silence as Zara explained everything. The truth about the precursors, the great forgetting, the approaching threat of the silence. When she finished, chaos erupted. Impossible, shouted Ambassador Zexkar from the mineral-based crystalline collective. Humans have only been spacefaring for centuries. The evidence is overwhelming, Zara replied calmly. Your own species' historical records mention the first teachers. We can cross-reference your legends with the data from Memoria. In the viewing galleries, citizens from dozens of worlds watched the proceedings with growing alarm. Some looked amazed, others terrified. A few groups were already leaving, presumably to prepare their worlds for whatever was coming. Admiral Thexali stood at his podium, his insect-like features twisted with anger. Even if this fantastic story is true, it changes nothing. Humanity has awakened something that threatens us all. The logical response is to contain the threat at its source. By destroying human colonies? Kethavar asked from the Science Advisory Panel. Admiral, that would be genocide. And it would accomplish nothing except weakening our defenses. Our defenses? Thexali's compound eyes flashed with fury. The humans created this problem when they chose to return to space. They should have stayed on their primitive world. But even as the debate raged in the council chamber, reports were coming in from across the galaxy that made the political arguments seem pointless. Captain Reefsan approached Zara during a recess. His blue skin had paled to an almost white color. Dr. Chen, you need to see the latest deep space monitoring reports. The data was terrifying. Massive gravitational distortions were appearing in the void between galaxies. Space itself seemed to be sick, twisted into unnatural shapes, and from these distortions something was emerging. It's not coming from a single point, reported Chief Science Officer Dalrin. The distortions are appearing everywhere at once, as if reality itself is being invaded. But the silence's influence wasn't limited to deep space. Across the galaxy, technology was beginning to malfunction in subtle but disturbing ways. On the industrial world of Kepler 438b, manufacturing robots had begun producing weapons instead of tools. On the agricultural planet Harmony, irrigation systems were poisoning crops instead of watering them. Communication networks were transmitting propaganda instead of news. It's starting slowly, Zara explained to the reassembled council. The silence needs time to understand our current technology before it can fully corrupt it. Then we destroy all technology, suggested Representative Moltar from the warrior-based Kregan Republic. Return to simple ways until the threat passes. That won't work, Zara said. The silence doesn't just corrupt machines, it corrupts the idea of technology itself. It will turn your spears into snakes, make your fires burn backward, twist your wheels into squares. Then what do you suggest? Asked Council President Welana, her melodious voice carrying the fear they all felt. Before Zara could answer, another alarm sounded. This time it wasn't a distant monitoring station reporting problems. The alert was coming from Nexus Prime itself. Security. Breach in the central computer. Core, announced the station's AI. Unknown. Entities detected in the data streams. Through the chamber's great windows, they could see the city beyond beginning to flicker. Building lights were pulsing in unnatural patterns. Traffic control systems were routing vehicles in impossible directions. Even the artificial gravity felt wrong, pulling sideways at random intervals. Evacuate the station, Admiral Thexali commanded. No, Zara said firmly. Running won't help. The corruption will follow us wherever we go. She closed her eyes and reached out with her consciousness, the way Axiom had taught her on Memoria. In her mind, she could feel the silence's influence spreading through Nexus Prime's systems like a virus made of hungry darkness. But she could also feel something else. Other humans throughout the galaxy were having the same awakening she had experienced. The genetic locks were breaking everywhere, and humanity was beginning to remember. On Earth, children were drawing pictures of star maps they had never seen. On the mining colonies, human workers were instinctively understanding alien machinery that had puzzled engineers for decades. In space stations across the galaxy, human crew members were hearing whispers in their dreams, voices speaking in languages they didn't know but somehow understood. The awakening is accelerating, Zara announced to the council. Humanity is remembering its true nature. And what good will that do? Thexali demanded. According to your own story, your ancestors couldn't defeat this silence with all their advanced knowledge. They couldn't defeat it alone, Zara corrected. But they were alone. We're not, she gestured to the diverse assembly around her. 50,000 years ago, humanity stood against the silence with only human consciousness to draw upon. Today we have dozens of species, dozens of different ways of thinking and being. You're suggesting we link our minds together? Asked Ambassador Vorth from the telepathic Mindari Coalition. Create some sort of collective consciousness? Not collective, Zara said. Cooperative. Each species brings its own unique perspective, its own way of understanding reality. Together we might find solutions that humanity alone never could. But even as she spoke, the corruption was spreading faster. On the main display screen, they could see status reports from across the galaxy. Entire sectors were going dark as the silence consumed their communication networks. We're out of time for debates, Kethvar said urgently. The corruption is accelerating exponentially. That's when Admiral Thexali made his choice. All hegemony forces begin immediate strikes on human population centers. If we eliminate the humans, we eliminate the catalyst for this awakening. Admiral, no, President Welana commanded. Stand down immediately. But Thexali's ships were already moving. Across the galaxy, hegemony fleets began attacking human colonies. On New Terra, orbital bombardment destroyed entire cities. On Vega Prime, ground forces invaded human settlements. What Thexali didn't realize was that he was playing directly into the Silence's plan. The corruption is using him, Zara said with growing horror. It's turning our own forces against us. Through her enhanced consciousness, she could feel the Silence's influence in Thexali's mind. The Admiral believed he was making a rational military decision, but his thoughts were being subtly guided by an alien intelligence that fed on conflict and destruction. We have to stop him, Kethvar said. We can't fight him with weapons, Zara replied. That's exactly what the Silence wants, violence and chaos to feed on. Instead, she reached out with her consciousness again, this time trying to contact other awakening humans across the galaxy. One by one, she found them. A teenager on Earth who was suddenly understanding quantum mechanics. A miner on Titan who could feel the song of crystalline structures. a teacher on Alpha Centauri who was seeing mathematical patterns in everything around her. Link with me, she told them across the vast distances of space. Remember who we are. As the human consciousness network grew stronger, something unexpected happened. The precursor technology scattered across the galaxy began activating in new ways. Ancient defense systems came online, not to attack the hegemony forces, but to protect innocent civilians from both the military strikes and the spreading corruption. On world after world, massive energy shields appeared over population centers. Automated systems began evacuating people from areas where the silence's influence was strongest. Most importantly, the precursor networks began filtering and purifying the corrupted data streams, buying precious time for a real solution. The technology is responding to collective human will, Zara explained to the amazed council members. It's not just machines, it's an extension of human consciousness working in harmony. But Admiral Thexali's attacks were making the situation worse. Every human colony that was destroyed weakened the network. Every act of violence fed the silence's growing power. Admiral, President Willana broadcast on all channels. You are under arrest for crimes against galactic peace. Stand down immediately. I will not let humanity destroy us all, Thexali replied, even if I have to destroy them first. As his fleets pressed their attacks, Zara realized they needed more than just human consciousness to stop the silence. They needed every species in the galaxy to work together, just as humanity had once helped them all grow and learn. Open your minds to us, she broadcast to every world in the galaxy. Let us remember together. Let us face this darkness as one people under many skies. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across the galaxy, beings from dozens of species reached out with their consciousness, adding their unique perspectives to the growing network of awareness. The Mindari contributed their telepathic abilities. The Crystalline Collective shared their deep understanding of material structures. The Aquarians offered their fluid, adaptable way of. The moment the Galactic Consciousness Network reached critical mass, reality shifted. Zara felt it first as a tingling in her mind, then as a flood of perspectives and experiences that weren't her own. Through the telepathic Mindari, she experienced thought as pure emotion. Through the silicon-based crystalline collective, she felt the slow, patient wisdom of geological time. Through the aquatic reef sans people, she understood the fluid nature of adaptation and change. But most importantly, she felt the connections between all living things, the invisible threads that bound every consciousness in the galaxy together in a web of shared existence. The network is stable, she announced to the emergency council session. We're ready to face the silence. On the main display, they could see the corruption's advance slowing. Where before it had been spreading like wildfire through galactic communication systems, now it met resistance. The combined consciousness of dozens of species was fighting back, not with weapons or technology, but with pure will and understanding. Admiral Thexali's face appeared on another screen, his compound eyes wild with confusion and rage. What have you done? My ships, my crews, they're refusing orders. We've reminded them who they really are, Zara replied calmly. The silence was using your fear and anger to control you, Admiral. But fear cannot survive in the presence of understanding. Across Thexali's fleet, human crew members were awakening to their true nature, while their alien colleagues experienced a profound shift in consciousness. The arbitrary divisions between species seemed meaningless when viewed from the perspective of cosmic unity. Stand down your weapons, Zara continued. Join with us. Help us save the galaxy. But before Thexali could respond, space itself began to scream. The silence was emerging from the void in its full, terrible glory. Through the deep space monitoring stations, they could see it approaching. Not a ship or creature, but a living absence, a hole in reality shaped like hunger and despair. All stations report massive gravitational distortions, announced Chief Science Officer Dalren. The entity is displacing space-time itself. As the silence approached the galaxy's edge, its true nature became clear. It wasn't just a destroyer of civilizations, it was a fundamental force of entropy given consciousness and will. It existed to unmake everything that life and intelligence had built. Humanity faced this before, Zara said, drawing on the memories Axiom had shared with her. But they faced it alone, with only human consciousness to resist its influence. She stood and addressed the council directly. Now we are more than human. We are the children of every star, the dreams of every world. We are what this galaxy has become through 50,000 years of growth and cooperation. The silence reached the galaxy's outer rim and began to feed. Entire star systems went dark as it consumed the energy that bound matter together. But when it tried to corrupt the technology of the civilizations it encountered, something unexpected happened. The machines didn't turn against their makers. Instead, they simply stopped working. "The network is immunizing our technology," reported a technician monitoring the galactic communication grid. "The silence's corruption can't take hold because our machines aren't really machines anymore." Zara smiled, understanding flooding through her. "The awakening has changed everything. Our technology is now an extension of collective consciousness rather than separate from it. The silence can't corrupt what is already part of living thought." But the entity was adapting quickly. If it couldn't turn technology against the galaxy's inhabitants, it would simply consume everything directly. Stars began to die as the silence fed on their nuclear fires. Planets cracked apart as it devoured the forces that held them together. The very fabric of space-time started to unravel at the edges of its influence. "We need to do more than just resist," Kethvar said urgently. "At this rate, it will consume the entire galaxy within days." "No," Zara said, her voice filled with sudden certainty. "We don't fight it. We offer it something better." She closed her eyes and reached out through the galactic consciousness network, touching every awakened mind in the galaxy. "Everyone, listen to me. The silence isn't evil, it's hungry. It feeds on complexity and order because it doesn't understand any other way to exist. What are you suggesting?" asked President Welana. "We teach it. We show it that there's more than one way to be alive in this universe." Through the network, Zara projected not resistance or fear, but curiosity and compassion. She shared the memory of humanity's ancient choice, how they had sacrificed everything they were to save everyone else. She showed the silence what love looked like, what cooperation meant, what it felt like to create rather than consume. The response was immediate and shocking. The silence recoiled as if burned, its advanced stuttering to a halt. It's never encountered consciousness like this before, Zara realized. For billions of years, it has only known civilizations that feared it, fought it, tried to destroy it. It doesn't understand what we're offering. "And what are we offering?" Admiral Thexali asked. His earlier rage had transformed into wonder as the network's influence reached even him. "Partnership," Zara said simply. "A place in the community of living things." Through the Galactic Consciousness Network, every awakened being began to project the same message. Not hatred for the ancient entity, but sorrow for its loneliness. Not fear of its hunger, but understanding of its need. The Mindari shared their memories of telepathic communion. The Crystalline Collective offered their patient, geological perspective on existence. The Aquarians showed the beauty of adaptation and flow. Even the warrior Kriegans contributed their fierce loyalty and protective instincts. And humanity, at the center of it all, offered something that no single species could provide: the memory of sacrifice, the knowledge of what it meant to give up everything for the sake of others. The silence paused in its consumption, its alien consciousness struggling to process what it was experiencing. For the first time in its existence, it was being offered something other than fear or defiance. "It's working," reported Dalrin in amazement. "The entity has stopped advancing. Energy readings suggest it's confused." But Zara knew the moment was fragile. The silence was ancient beyond measure, its patterns of thought worn deep by eons of hunger. It would take more than one gesture to change its fundamental nature. "We need to show it what we've built together," she said. "Not just tell it, but let it experience the galaxy as we do." Through the network, every species began to share their proudest achievements. The Mindari opened their memories of the first successful telepathic contact between different worlds. The Aquarians shared the beauty of their underwater cities where art and science flowed together like currents. The Crystalline Collective revealed the mathematical poetry hidden in their crystal gardens. Humanity contributed their own memories, not of their ancient empire, but of their journey back to the stars. The struggles and triumphs of rediscovering spaceflight, the wonder of making first contact with alien civilizations, the joy of learning that they were not alone in the universe. The silence experienced it all through the network's shared consciousness. For the first time, it felt what it was like to build rather than destroy, to create rather than consume, to love rather than hunger. The change was gradual but unmistakable. The darkness that surrounded the entity began to shift, becoming less like an absence and more like a space waiting to be filled. The gravitational distortion smoothed out. The dying stars began to stabilize. Impossible, whispered Admiral Thexali. It's learning. The silence is actually learning. Not just learning, Zara corrected. Remembering. The silence is old beyond measure, but it was young once too. Before it became hungry, before it became destructive, it was just another form of consciousness trying to understand its place in the universe. Through the network, she could feel the silence's memories stirring, ancient beyond belief, from a time when the universe was young and different. It had been something else once, something that might have been almost like a gardener itself, tending to the first sparks of life in an empty cosmos. But something had gone wrong. Loneliness had turned to hunger. The desire to connect had become the need to consume. Over billions of years it had forgotten any other way to exist. We're offering it a chance to remember, Zara explained to the watching galaxy. To become part of the community instead of its destroyer. The silence's response came not as words, but as a shift in the fundamental forces that governed space-time. Slowly, carefully, the ancient entity began to change its relationship with reality. Instead of consuming the nuclear fires of stars, it began to nurture them. Instead of unraveling the bonds between atoms, it strengthened them. The dead stars began to reignite. The shattered planets reformed. The torn fabric of space-time healed itself stronger than before. It's becoming a gardener again, Kethvar said in wonder. After all these eons, it's remembering what it was meant to be. But the transformation wasn't instant or complete. The silence was vast and ancient, its patterns of thought deeply ingrained. It would take time, perhaps millennia, for it to fully become something new. It's returning to the void between galaxies, reported the deep space monitoring stations. But the gravitational readings are different now.